And well, Trudeau, it seems to me that Trudeau believes his own press releases in some real sense. And I'm not actually quite as cynical about that as I might be, because I don't think it's possible to generate a web of deception around you, a web of instrumental deception around you, and simultaneously maintain your distance from that. And so I think when he feeds stories to the CBC, and then the CBC feeds them back, he believes it. It's not merely cynical. It's that he's trapped up in his own web of deception.
I think we've been seeing in the last couple of years, one of the hallmarks of authoritarian regimes is that they peddle half-truths or things that often are not true. But quite often they tend to believe in the system that the people around them are made to buy into those half-truths because that essentially strengthens the system. And we've seen that largely in our public health exercise. We've seen, for instance, that and even I'm talking about objective facts that we understood pretty well. For instance, we knew that the modeling was not reliable. The modeling was consistently overly aggressive. They would meet some of the metrics like cases, but we understood very early that the factor by which you have to multiply all the categories we're interested in, like hospitalizations or deaths, was constantly overstated. But despite that, even though time and time again the modelers were wrong, the government continued to this pervasive fear, this belief that we have to continue down this very aggressive path of mitigation that, of course, resulted in a catastrophe.
And a catastrophe that hasn't ended yet, because the fact that we disrupted supply chains, we're still going to pay for that. And I was thinking the other day, too, because we locked everything down around the whole world, that also meant that political leaders didn't get to meet face to face. And so in some real sense, Putin, for example, was taken out of the face-to-face discussions that might have also otherwise occurred for a period of a couple of years. And God only knows what that did to savage Russia-Western relationships. So the consequences of this lockdown have not by any stretch of the imagination come to an end yet. Now, you got tossed out of the Doug Ford conservative provincial caucus because of your vociferous objection to the lockdown. So
we didn't have the courage, we didn't have the political courage to say enough. We have to reassess our response because we're clearly harming people, right? If this was tax policy or if we were dealing with, highway construction and fine, I understand why some people might be more inclined to do politics than others. But when it comes to human life, and that's what I try to stress in this exercise, subsequent to my expulsion from the Conservative caucus, I've been subjected to a lot of criticism, I would say, pointed lightly, by our opposition, by media and others. But and somehow there is this dispersion where people try to suggest that you don't care about life or you want to compromise life. But I think it's precisely the opposite. It was an attempt to save lives. And in fact, I think that this entire exercise over the last couple of years dehumanized so many people around the world. In fact, as we try to convey this collective sense goal of safetyism, what we've in fact done is the opposite, is we've compromised human life. We've compromised human ingenuity. We've regressed our children considerably. And so the goal was to take a holistic view. And so that's what I'm upset by my friends.
As a psychologist and a research psychologist, I know perfectly well that asking people questions to find out what they really think is unbelievably difficult. And so the way you formulate the question to a large part determines the response you're going to get. So, for example, when Trudeau, here's a good indication, when Trudeau clamped down on the truckers, the polls indicated that most Canadians supported his decision. But at the same time, the polls indicated that his popularity had plummeted. And so what in the world are you supposed to make of that if you're polling? And so if you're a political leader and you're your guidance is polls, first of all, you're relying on something that's unbelievably unreliable. Short-term sampling of public whim done badly by people who don't have the psychological credibility to answer the questions properly. And then, as you said, you have a proclivity to forego your principles. Now, I know that the Doug Ford government, as well as the federal Liberals, was relying on poll data to make their decisions. And so you said even the Premier agreed with you, at least in private, in relationship to the appalling consequences of the lockdowns and the abdication of political responsibility to healthcare experts. So why didn't they have the courage of their convictions?
Politics. Politics is, as I often say...
Yeah, but it's stupid. It's stupid politics, right? Because there's no indication that following the polls in that manner actually constitutes a reasonable way forward.
So politics is the rot on government. It's the cause of almost everything that's bad with government, and I hope that we get into that in a moment. But back to opinion polling for a moment. What's important to appreciate is that a lot of that opinion is also shaped by government itself and media. The public would react with fear. The government would feel that intuitively and would act in response to that fear, even when it was. And then in order to justify its own decisions subsequent to the fact, the government would add more fear